Unlike the 1920s, the 1930s would be a sustained period of economic depression. After the laissez-faire, business-friendly, and shrinking government policies of the presidents in the 1920s, Americans would experience more government influence in their lives as President FDR tried to solve the problems of the Great Depression. What caused the Great Depression? While there was no one cause of the Great Depression, most people probably remember the stock market crash in 1929. The overspeculation in the stock market, where investors bought shares of risky investments thinking that it would make them rich, ended up being one of the reasons why many lost much of their money during the time of the Great Depression. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff. A tariff is a tax on foreign goods coming into the country. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff was passed during the Hoover administration in order to protect American products and businesses from foreign competition. The idea was that if foreign goods are more expensive and American goods are cheaper, then Americans will buy more American goods, which will support American businesses and workers. Did it work? No. The tariff actually made consumer goods more expensive and deepened the economic depression. Roosevelt would remove this tariff during his administration. As businesses closed, many workers were left without jobs or pay. Not having shelter or food was now a way of life for many. Soup kitchens began to open, offering people free food and a nourishing meal. Long lines, sometimes referred to as bread lines, formed as people waited for a hot meal. As a way to calm American fears about their economic troubles, FDR would reach out to the American public through radio, known as fireside chats, and explain his policies about how his administration was dealing with the Great Depression. Americans could tune in and hear the voice of their president and be calmed of their fears about what was going on in their lives during the Great Depression. The economic depression wasn't the only thing people had to worry about during this time. The Southern Plains portion of the United States was experiencing a severe drought. As the vegetation and crops dried up, it exposed the bare soil. High, choking winds swept through the region from Texas all the way to Nebraska, killing people and livestock. This was sometimes known as the Dirty 30s because the event of the Dust Bowl happened during the 1930s. As many of the aged population were left without income, FDR created the Social Security Program. This would give money or income to those who were too old to work. This was a welcome relief to those who had lost their money in the stock market or because of bank closures. They could now receive money from the government to help them live. Many Americans during the time of the Great Depression lost all of the money that they had kept in banks as a result of bank closures. FDR wanted Americans to have confidence in the banks again. The FDIC was created as a safeguard just in case a bank closed because of unsound financial practices. Banks would begin advertising to their customers that they were FDIC insured. This meant that if the bank closed, its customers' money was insured and would be repaid by the federal government. Today, a customer's money, because of the FDIC, is insured up to $250,000. While FDR passed much of the New Deal programs through Congress, he would hit a wall with the Supreme Court, which ruled that many of his programs were unconstitutional. In order to pass his programs and out of frustration with the court, FDR came up with a plan to pack the court, that is, to seat justices who agreed with his programs and who would not declare his New Deal programs unconstitutional. The way he would do this is by adding new justices to the existing 9 justices already on the court. His plan was met with much opposition, as it was believed that he would have too much power in the executive branch and he would become more like a dictator than a president. Also, if he were to pack the court with justices he wanted, what would keep other presidents from other political parties from doing the same thing? His court packing plan did not succeed. The Hoover Dam was a public works project started by President Hoover to help provide water and electricity to arid, dry states in the western parts of the U.S. Located in the state of Arizona, it was instrumental in providing natural resources, like water, to a growing population out west. Repatriation is the return of someone to their own country. Because of the severe economic downturn during the Great Depression, Americans were concerned about their jobs. Immigrants were seen as being a reason for job losses, so as a result, immigration was halted and many immigrants were sent back to their home countries. Many Mexican Americans were also sent back to Mexico, even though they were American citizens. George Washington, the first U.S. president, only served 2 terms in office. Even though the Constitution during that time did not have term limits for president, Washington felt it was important to set a precedent or example for all other presidents that 2 terms should be the maximum amount of time for a president to serve. All presidents after Washington would follow his example until Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Roosevelt felt that the country was in so much trouble with the Great Depression and later World War II that it would not be right to step aside and have another president serve in his place. FDR would be the only president to be elected to 4 terms in office. The 22nd Amendment was passed to ensure that this would never happen again, and now all U.S. presidents are bound to 2 terms in office.